Welcome back to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
So today we're doing something a bit different, really focusing in,
Yeah, we're tackling a core chess skill tactical vision.
specifically how you can actually spot those moments to checkmate your opponent. And, just as vital, how you see those threats coming your way.
That's the plan.
Mm.
And we're using a particular method today, kind of a step-by-step approach.
Right, almost like having a tutor guiding you, asking questions.
Exactly. We'll lay out an idea, a small piece, then pose a question for you, the listener, to think about, like you would in a game.
And then we walk through the answer together. The whole point is active learning, yeah, to help build that pattern recognition.
So you spot these things quicker when it matters. This is really for anyone looking to sharpen that tactical edge, whether you're newer to this stuff or just want a clearer way to see the board.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive in. Where do we start? It has to be the king, right?
Absolutely. Everything revolves around the king. Keeping yours safe, attacking theirs, it's the heart of the game.
The king can't be captured, obviously, but it can be attacked.
And when it is attacked, that's called check. And you must react immediately.
So just to be crystal clear, check means the king is under direct threat.
Yes. An opponent's piece is attacking the square the king is on. If nothing changed, it could theoretically be captured next move, which is illegal, of course.
Yeah.
Check is immediate danger.
And the goal of the whole game.
Checkmate. That's how you win. Checkmate is when the king is in check.
Okay, under attack.
And there's absolutely no legal way for it to escape that attack on the very next move. Game over, you've won.
That's the first big thing to lock in then. If your king is in check, you have to deal with it. No other moves allowed.
None at all. Your entire focus narrows right down to saving the king.
Now, something that often confuses beginners, it definitely confused me early on, checkmate is king attacked, no escape, win.
Right.
What if the king is not attacked, but it's your turn, and you literally have 0 legal moves, not just for the king, but for any piece?
Ah, yes. Very important distinction.
Yeah.
That's called stalemate.
Stalemate.
Okay. The king is not in check, but no piece on your side can make a legal move. And the result?
It's a draw, right? Not a win for the opponent.
Exactly. It's a draw. Checkmate requires the king to be under attack and trapped. Stalemate means the king is trapped, but not currently attacked, and nothing else can move either.
Check plus no escape equals mate. Win.
Yep.
No check plus no moves equals stalemate. Draw.
Got it. Knowing that difference is huge. You don't want to accidentally draw a winning position by stalemating.
Okay, so back to check. My king is attacked. I must get out of check. How? You said there were limited options?
Precisely 3 ways. Only 3 possible ways to get out of check. If and only if none of these work, then it's checkmate. Let's break them down.
Option 1.
Capture the attacking piece. Sometimes the simplest solution.
So if an enemy rook slides over and checks my king, I look around. Can any of my pieces, knight, bishop, queen, whatever, land on that rook square and capture it next move?
Yes. If you can take the piece that's delivering the check, the threat is gone. Check averted.
Or maybe a queen checks from afar. Can my knight jump to that square? Can my bishop slide there? If yes, capture is an option.
That's method 1. Eliminate the source of the check.
Okay. What if I can't capture it? Method 2.
Flee. Move the king to a safe square.
Right, the king can step 1 square in any direction.
So you have to examine every square immediately adjacent to your king. Up, down, sideways, diagonally, up to 8 possibilities.
And for each of those squares, I need to ask, is this square safe? Meaning, is it attacked by any enemy piece?
Crucial point. Not just the piece giving check, but any opposing piece. You need to scan for rooks, bishops, knights, queens, pawns, even their king. Is the square under fire from anything?
So if a bishop checks my king diagonally, I look at the squares next to my king. If there's one square that's off that diagonal and no other enemy piece controls it,
Then your king can move there. You flee to safety. That escapes the check.
you have to be systematic, though. Check every single adjacent square.
Absolutely. If even one is safe, the king can potentially move there, and it's not checkmate.
Okay, capture the attacker or flee with the king. What's the third way?
Interpose. Place a piece between your king and the attacker.
Like blocking the line of fire.
Exactly. But this only works if the check comes from a distance, from a piece that attacks along a straight line.
So a rook, a bishop, or a queen.
Correct. Knights check in an L shape. Pawns attack diagonally forward. There's no line between them and the king to block when they give check.
Okay, so if an enemy queen checks my king from the other side of the board, I look at the squares on the line between my king and that queen.
Yes, and you ask, Can any of my other pieces, a knight, bishop, rook, pawn, even my own queen, move on to one of those empty squares in between?
If I can place one of my pieces on that line.
It acts like a shield. It intercepts the attack. The check is blocked. Your king is safe for the moment.
So the three ways again: capture, flee, or interpose block.
Those are the only ways. Capture, flee, block.
Now this is where the method comes in, right? To know if it's checkmate, you have to go through these systematically.
Precisely. This is the checklist you need whenever you see a check, whether you're giving or receiving it. Pause and ask these 3 questions for the side whose king is in check. Always in this order.
Question 1. Can the checking piece be captured?
If yes, not checkmate, stop. If no, move to question 2.
Question 2. Can the king move to a safe adjacent square?
If yes, not checkmate, stop. If no, move to question 3.
Question 3. Can a piece be interposed to block the check? Only relevant for checks from rooks, bishops, or queens.
If yes, not checkmate, stop.
And only if the answer to all 3 is no.
Only then is it checkmate. No capture, no flight, no block, trapped, game over.
Let's walk through that with a common pattern. Say the black king is on its back rank, maybe e8. Its own pawns are right in front on e7, f7, g7, blocking it in.
Okay, typical setup. King walled in by its own troops.
Now white plays rook to e1, checking the black king along the file. Wait, no, let's make it simpler. Rook to e8, checking along the rank. White rook on e8, black king on, say, g8, pawns on f7, g7, h7.
Okay, white rook on e8, black king on g8, blocked by pawns on f7, g7, h7. White rook checks along the 8th rank. Let's assume the white rook is protected, maybe by another piece, or just far enough away that the king can't take it directly. Apply the checklist for black.
Question 1. Can black capture the white rook on e8? Let's say no, it's protected. Or maybe the king is on g8 and the rook on e8 is too far, so no.
Okay, question 2. Can the black king flee? It's on g8. Pawn on g7 blocks moving forward. Pawn on s7 might block f8. Pawn on h7 blocks h8. The white rook on e8 attacks f8 and h8 along the rank anyway, so no adjacent squares are safe or available.
No escape squares. Okay, question 3. Can a black piece interpose, block the check? The check is along the 8th rank between e8 and g8. Can any black piece move to f8? Let's say no other black pieces are around that can move to f8.
So if the answer is no capture, no flee, and no block...
That sounds like checkmate.
It is. That's the classic back rank checkmate we mentioned. The checklist confirms it. Methodical.
Okay, another quick one. Enemy bishop checks my king. q1. Can I capture it? No, protected. q2. Can the king flee? I look around. Yeah, there's a square right next to it off the diagonal, completely safe.
So, question 1, no. Question 2.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means it's not checkmate, just check. King moves to the safe square. Phew.
See, the process works. Find one, yes, and you know it's not mate. Only need to check all 3 if the first 2 fail. The systematic check is your absolute bedrock for analyzing checks.
Okay, let's focus more on that pattern we just saw. The back rank mate. You said it's really common.
Extremely common, especially in beginner and intermediate games. People often forget to give their king an escape hatch.
The setup is key. The enemy king is stuck on their own back rank. Rank 1 for white, rank 8 for black. Usually it's their own pawns forming a wall in front.
Right. Those pawns on the 2nd rank often haven't moved. So if you can get a heavy piece, a rook or a queen, onto that back rank.
And it gives check. And the king can't capture it, it's protected or too far, can't flee, pawns block forward, your piece controls sideways, and no piece can block.
Bingo, checkmate. Your rook or queen completely dominates that rank, and the king is just trapped by its own pawns.
But wait, what if they do have a piece defending the back rank? Just putting my rook there might not be enough, right? We need sufficient attacking power.
Excellent point. It's not automatic.
Yeah.
Let's say black's king's on g8, pawns on f7, g7, h7 again, but this time black also has a rook sitting on f8, defending the back rank.
Okay. White plays rook to e8. Check. What happens now? Apply the checklist for black.
q1. Capture white rook.
Yeah.
No. Assume protected. q2. King flee. No. Pawns block. White rook controls squares like f8, though the black rook is there. q3. Interpose block.
Ah. Black can block. The black rook on a8 can slide over to... Wait, no. The check is on e8. The king is on g8. The black rook is on f8. It is between the checker and the king.
Good catch. If the white rook is on e8 and the black king is on g8, the black rook on f8 is already interposing. The check is impossible like that. Okay, let's adjust. White rook on h8, checking the king on g8, black rook on f8.
Okay, white rook h8 checks king g8. Black rook f8 defends. Checklist for black. q1, capture rook h8? No. q2, flee. King can't go to f8. Black rook there. Can't go to h7 or g7. Pawns. Can't go to f7. Pawns. So no flee. q3, interpose. Can the black rook on f8 move to g8 to block? No, the king is there. Can any other piece block on the line h8, g8? Let's say no. Looks like mate.
But wait, can the black rook on f8 capture the white rook on h8?
Oh, right. Q1 wasn't just can the king capture, it was can the checking piece be captured. Yes. If the white rook on h8 isn't protected, the black rook on f8 can just take it.
Exactly. So if the white rook wasn't protected, black captures, check averted, not mate. Okay, scenario adjustment needed for the power concept. White rook on e8 checks the king on g8. Black rook on f8 defends the f8 square. White rook is protected, say, by a bishop on b5.
White rook e8 checks king g8, protected. Black rook on f8, q1, capture, no, protected, q2, flee, king can't go g7 pawn, f8, controlled by re8, h8, controlled by re8, f7 pawn, h7 pawn, king stuck, q3, interpose. Can the black rook on f8 move to g8? No. Can it move to f8? It's already there. Can it move to e8 to capture? No, protected. Can it move to f8 to block the line? e8, g8. Yes. Black plays rook f8.
Okay, black blocks with rook f8, check averted. Why wasn't it mate?
Because white had one attacker, rook e8, aiming at the back rank squares near the king, but black had one defender, rook f8, able to interpose on a key square. Attacker 1, defender e1, not enough power for white.
Perfect. Now, same setup, but white has two rooks that can reach the back rank. Say rook on e1 and rook on d1. Black still just has the king on g8 and rook on f8.
Okay. White plays rook from e1 to e8. Check. Protected.
Black's only option, as we saw, is to interpose, rook f8.
But now white has another rook. White plays rook from d1, takes the black rook on f8. Capture. And this rook is now also attacking along the 8th rank.
It's check again. The rook on f8 is checking the king on g8. Let's run the checklist for black now.
Q1. Can black capture the white rook on f8? Let's say white's other rook on e8 protects it, so no.
Q2. Can the king flee? Still stuck. Squares g7, f7, h7 blocked by pawns. Square h8 is controlled by the white rook on e8. No escape.
Q3. Can any black piece interpose on the line f8, g8? Black's only defender, the rook, was just captured, so no.
No capture, no flee, no block.
Checkmate.
Exactly. Two rooks, attackers, overwhelmed one rook defender. It often comes down to counting the forces bearing down on those critical back rank squares. Do you have more attackers than they have defenders?
This leads right into defending, especially using interposition. You mentioned sometimes blocking is useless.
Yeah, useless interpositions when you put a piece in the way, but the attacker can just capture it immediately, and after the capture, the king is still in check, or maybe even checkmated right away.
So white rook checks on the back rank. I block with my bishop, but the white rook can just take the bishop for free.
And if, after white takes the bishop, the rook is still checking your king, and your king still has no squares, and no other piece can block,
then blocking with the bishop achieved nothing except losing the bishop. Useless.
right. A useful interposition is different. Maybe the piece you block with is protected.
Like, white rook checks on the back rank. I block by putting my own rook in the way, and my rook is protected by my queen.
Now, if white takes your rook, you take their rook back with your queen. White loses their attacker for nothing. That block was useful. It stopped the check effectively.
So when thinking about blocking, you absolutely have to ask, what happens next? Can they just take my blocker?
Yes. If they can take it easily, and it doesn't fundamentally solve the problem, it's probably useless. Look harder for a king move, or maybe even capturing the attacker if possible.
Sometimes, though, to break through a defense like that, the attacker needs to do something drastic, like sacrificing material.
Oh yeah, sacrifices are often key, especially using forcing moves, checks, and captures to rip open the defense.
Let's try that. Black king stuck on g8, pawns f7, g7, h7. Black rook defending on f8. White has a queen, say on d3, and a rook on e1.
Okay.
White wants to mate on the back rank. The black rook on f8 is in the way, so white plays. Queen takes rook on f8. Check.
Whoa! Sacrificing the queen for the rook. That's a major sacrifice.
Yeah.
But it's check, so black must respond.
Apply the checklist for black. Q1. Capture the queen on f8. Maybe the black king on g8 can take it. Let's say yes for this example. King takes queen on f8.
Okay, black recaptures. King g8 takes queen f8. The immediate check is gone. But what's the situation now? Where's black's defending rook?
It's gone. Sacrificed off by the queen. And where's the black king now?
It's on f8. It moved off g8.
And where's white's other piece, that rook on e1?
Ah, it now has a clear path to the back rank. White plays rook e1 to e8. Check.
Okay, checklist for black again. King is now on f8. Rook on e8 gives check. Q1. Can king f8 capture rook e8? No. Too far. Any other piece capture it? Let's say no.
Q2. Can king f8 flee? We're going to go. g8. Attacked by the rook on e8.
Yeah.
s7. Blocked by its own pawn. e7. Let's say blocked by a pawn. g7. Blocked by pawn. Only square is maybe e8. No, rook is there. Wait, king on f8 is checked by rook on e8. It can move to g8, hg, g7, h7, f7, e7, e8. Oh, lots of squares. Okay, this example got complicated. Let's reset the sacrifice idea slightly.
Okay, how about black king g8, black rook f8, white queen d3, white rook e1. White plays queen, takes rook f8, check. But UT, this time, black cannot take the queen with the king. Let's say the queen is protected by a white bishop on c5.
Got it. Queen takes rook f8, check. Queen protected by bishop. Black king on g8, checklist. q1, capture queen f8, king capture. Right. Any other black piece. Let's say black has a knight on g6 that can take the queen on f8. Black plays knight, takes queen f8.
Okay, check averted. Black won the queen. But wait, where was black's defending rook?
Gone. Captured by the queen in
There is the knight that recaptured.
It's now on f8. It moved off g6.
And white's rook on e1.
Still waiting.
Yeah.
Now white plays rook e1 to e8.
Check. Checklist for black now. King g8. Rook e8 checks. q1, capture rook e8. No, assume protected or too far. q2, flee. King stuck. g7, f7, h7 pawns. f8, occupied by black knight. h8, attacked by rook e8. q3, interpose. Can the knight on f8 block on the line? e8, g8. No, it can't move there. Can any other black piece block? No.
No capture, no flee, no block.
Checkmate, even though white sacrificed the queen.
Exactly. The sacrifice was a forcing move, a check and a capture, that removed the key defender, the black rook, and lured another piece, the knight, onto a square where it couldn't help defend against the next check from the other piece, the white rook. Powerful stuff. Look for those forcing moves.
Beyond back ranks, there are other essential tactical tools. Let's talk about pins.
Right. A pin is a situation where a piece attacks an enemy piece, but behind that enemy piece on the same line of attack is something more valuable.
And the most powerful kind is when the king is the piece behind.
That's an absolute pin. The piece in the middle literally cannot move because moving it would illegally expose the king to check. Imagine a white rook on e1, a black knight on e5, and the black king on e8.
The black knight on e5 is pinned by the rook. It cannot legally move off the e-file. It's paralyzed.
Completely stuck. Now, if that knight was the only piece defending, say, a square like f7.
And I can attack f7 with my queen, the knight can't move to defend f7 because it's pinned. Maybe I can checkmate on f7 now.
Precisely. Pins immobilize defenders, opening but attacking lanes. If the piece behind isn't the king, but say a queen, it's a relative pin. The knight could move, but you lose your queen. Usually not a good idea.
So always be scanning for those lines. Rook, bishop, queen, aiming through an enemy piece towards something more valuable behind it. Pins can win material or enable checkmates.
Spotting them is key. And setting them up.
Okay, one more major tactic. Discovered check.
The discovered check.
Yeah.
Very elegant, often very nasty. This happens when you move a piece.
But that piece doesn't give check itself.
Right. Its movement uncovers an attack from a different piece that was sitting behind it, aimed at the enemy king.
Like, my rook is on d1, my bishop is on d2, and the enemy king is on d8. The bishop is blocked by the rook.
But if you move the rook anywhere off the d-file, say rook to e1.
Boom. The bishop on d2 suddenly attacks the king on d8. Check. But it was the rook's move that revealed it.
That's the discovery. And what makes discovered checks so dangerous is that the piece you moved, the rook in this case, is now free to do something else at the same time.
So my rook moves to e1, uncovering the bishop check. And maybe the rook now attacks their queen on e7.
Exactly. Double threat. They must deal with the check to their king, often meaning they can't save their queen. Discovered checks combined with another threat are incredibly powerful.
And the ultimate is a discovered checkmate.
Yeah. Move one piece, reveal a check from another piece, and that check is mate, no capture, flee, or block possible. Game over instantly.
So you need to look for those hidden lines. Where are my long-range pieces, rook, bishop, queen, pointing, even if blocked? Could moving the blocking piece unleash hell?
Constantly scan for those potential discoveries. Where can the front piece move to create the biggest headache?
Wow, okay. We've really gone step by step today. Started with the absolute core, check, checkmate, and that crucial difference with stalemate.
Then the 3 ways out of check. Capture, flee, block. And using that as our rigorous checklist.
Focus on the back rank mate pattern, the setup, needing enough power, useful versus useless blocks, and how sacrifices can blast through.
And wrapped up with pins, paralyzing defenders, and discovered checks unleashing hidden attacks.
The big theme seems to be forcing moves, checks and captures. They dictate the action.
They really do. They limit the opponent's choices and often open the door to these tactical shots. And the method, asking those specific questions, can they capture? Can they flee? Can they block? that trains your brain to see the possibilities.
It feels like getting a set of keys, understanding these ideas.
It is. Now, the real challenge and the fun part is using them. Next time you play or even look at a puzzle, pause.
Especially when there's a check, or kings look a bit exposed. Ask the questions. Look for the patterns, back rank, pins, discoveries.
Can you force something with a check or a capture? Make that systematic approach part of your thinking.
So for you listening, what part of this step-by-step process, this way of questioning, really clicks? How could consciously using that checklist change how you look at the board?
Keep practicing it. Keep looking for those forcing moves, those patterns. That's how you build that tactical muscle. Keep playing, keep analyzing.